What's up guys, my name is Ace and welcome to Spawn Guides, the series where I cover all of the most common spawns and how they behave on every map in Call of Duty Ghosts for Domination. In today's episode, we're going to be moving back to one of the original maps to take a little bit of a break from the DLC because some of you guys have given me feedback saying that you either have absolutely no interest in buying the DLC, or you're maybe on PlayStation or PC and you don't want to spoil the maps by watching videos on it early. And that's completely understandable, so I thought I would take a week's break here from the DLC maps, and for both my spawn guides and maps exposed, which will be coming out tomorrow, I'm going to be moving back to one of the original maps. So in today's episode, we're going to be covering the map Flooded. Let's get into it. Alright, so first off, as always, if you guys are new to this series and you haven't seen the prelude, I highly recommend you go and check that out first because it introduces a base of knowledge that you need to be able to understand exactly what I'm talking about throughout this series. I'll leave you guys an annotation link right here, as well as a link in the description. Alright, so the spawns on Flooded, as you can see, are a little bit cramped and a little bit confusing because there are a couple different levels to this map. There's multiple two-story buildings and parkades and things like that, so you really have to pay attention to what level the spawns are on. And also, especially around the B flag area, the spawns are really cramped and really close together. And because of this, it's really difficult to predict the exact spawn that your enemy is going to spawn at. Typically, it's one of those maps where you want to predict the general area that you think your enemies are going to be spawning in, rather than the exact spawn point. So for the A flag, as you can see, there are only 3 common spawns attached to it, and this is a little bit of a problem because these spawns can flip out quite easily if you put a little bit too much pressure on the A flag. One thing that's important to note with these spawns is the one in the picture on the top left that you can see there, that is actually in the bottom level of that building. And the one just below it is on the top level of that building in the same room as the A flag. So it's important to be able to distinguish which level these spawns are on. As for that other spawn, one thing I just want to point out is if you spawn there, be aware of people that may be pushed up towards the A flag, because oftentimes I'll catch people that sprint straight off that spawn towards the A flag building, and I'm on the stairs at the A flag and I can pick them off really easily because they just don't expect anyone to be there. So just be aware when you spawn there, and also if you are pushing towards the A flag and the enemy team holds A, make sure you have a look over towards that spawn because oftentimes you'll get a guy that's just sprinting straight at you blindly. Moving on to the B flag, this is where things can get a little bit confusing as far as spawns go. As you can see, there are a ton of spawns and they're really cramped, really close together, and you really have to pay attention to what level those spawns are on. So for instance, the one on the top left is actually above B, the one just below it is, well, it's below it on the map as well, just around the corner from B. And then there's the one up in the open corridor there on the top right picture that you can see there, and that's on the top level. Then right below that, that's on the bottom level in the water. And then finally, there's the one that's just inside that middle door area that goes towards B from the mid-map area, and that's on the bottom level as well. So it's just really important to note which level it's on, and also it can be really difficult to predict these spawns, like I said before, because they are just so close together and everything is so cramped that it's really difficult to predict the exact spawn location that your enemy will be spawning at. As for the C flag, there are only 4 spawns attached to the C flag, and they're all pretty straightforward. The 2 near the back of the map that are displayed on the right side of your screen right here are the most common C spawns, and the other ones will only really happen if your team is anchored towards the A area, or if you hold A and C, then these spawns can be relatively common. But otherwise, if you only hold the C flag, these spawns aren't very common. Once again, we have a little bit of multi-level business going on with a couple of these spawns, so I just wanted to point this out. The spawn that you can see on the bottom left of the screen, that's in the top level of the parkade, and the one just to the right of that is actually in the bottom level underneath the parkade. Alright, so finally, let's cover the shared spawns on this map. First, let's look at the one on the left. This spawn is not a very common spawn on this map. You can spawn there if you only hold the A flag, you can spawn there if you only hold the B flag, but you really need a teammate that's anchoring you back there. So if you have a sniper that's sitting right at the back corner there, then you may anchor back to this spawn. Otherwise, it's not a very popular place to spawn at. The shared spawn on the right side of the map, however, does need a little bit of explaining because it is a relatively common spawn. This spawn most commonly happens when you do hold the B flag, but I have spawned there as well by only holding the C flag and by only holding the A flag. I find this to be sort of an emergency spawn in a lot of situations, especially if you're at the A flag, you only hold the A flag and the enemy team maybe pushes a little bit too hard and starts blocking off your A spawns. It's very likely that you'll flip over to this shared spawn way at the top right corner. Alright, so that covers the spawn locations on this map with a brief description of where they are and how they behave. Now let's get into some in-game situations. So one thing that I didn't notice until I started making this episode is I don't have any flooded gameplay saved up. This is just one of those maps that I never really do exceptionally well in. I usually play pretty consistently well on this map, I just don't have those exceptional gameplays, and therefore I never really record them. So I'm going to have to use some examples against bots here, but keep in mind the spawns behave exactly the same way against bots as they would against regular players. You'll notice in these clips I also left the radar always on so you can see exactly where the enemy players are at all times, and you can really see exactly where they're spawning and how the spawns are working. In this first clip, the enemy team holds only the C flag and I'm pushed right up towards the C flag. This is a very common occurrence in real games. And just pay attention, it doesn't matter how close I am to that back C spawn on the other side of this wall right here, the enemy team will keep spawning here. So this is something you really have to pay attention to in a real game. If you're pushing towards the C flag and that's the only flag that the enemy team holds, they'll often spawn just on the other side of that wall, and people a lot of the times will turn their back to that side of the wall because they figured that they have cleared that side of the map out, and then the enemy team will spawn back there and shoot you in the back while you're trying to cap C. In this next clip, I want to demonstrate how the spawns can kind of flip back and forth from one side of the B flag to the other side of the B flag based on my positioning and where I'm killing enemies. Throughout this clip, I was not able to predict the exact spawn location, but I was able to predict the general area of the spawn that my enemy was going to be at, and that's all you really need to know on this map. So right here, I'm pushing through towards the B flag. I'm killing all of these guys that had just spawned on this side of the B flag, and there's still a few more that are popping up because they're still being anchored over there. So I'm going to kill these guys, and then my teammate is going to push up into the B area. Now that I've cleared off these spawns and my teammate has obviously blocked a couple as well, it's very obvious to me they're going to be spawning towards this direction right here. And as you can see, they just start popping up in this back shared spawn as well as down below in the water. So again, the big thing with these B spawns is not to be able to predict the exact spawn location, just the general area of the spawn. Alright, so now that we've got that covered, let's test your knowledge of the spawns on Flooded. One thing is a little bit different with this one on this map because there are the multiple levels that you really have to know. So I created the little white arrow. So if there's a little white arrow above the player, then that means they're on the top level. If there isn't an arrow, then they're on the bottom level. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at player positioning here. So in this first situation, as you can see, the green team holds A and B and the red team holds C. A big part of the green team is also pushed right up towards the C flag, and the red team is pushed kind of towards the B flag. Where would a red guy spawn right now? I'll give you guys a few seconds to make a decision. If you pick this back C spawn or this top shared spawn, then you're likely correct. Let's go over why that is. So we know the red team holds only the C flag, so the game wants to spawn them at a C spawn if possible. These three C spawns right here, the red player would be spawning with the green player directly in his line of sight, and the game doesn't like to do that, so we're going to eliminate these three spawns. This leaves us with one remaining C spawn, and I would be willing to bet that this is the spawn that would happen, and that's just based on personal experience with the spawns on this map, and that spawn in particular. Like I showed you in the clip before, this spawn is very sticky and also very common. Having said that, I wouldn't rule out that top right shared spawn either because they are anchoring the spawn over towards that direction too. Moving on to the second test, we're going to keep everything exactly the same, but we're going to say that this green player right here gets killed. Where will he spawn? Once again, I'll give you guys a few seconds to make your choice. Did you guys pick one of these three B spawns? If so, you're most likely correct. Once again, let's have a look at why that is. So as you can see, the largest group of green players is actually pushed up towards the C flag right now, but they have not touched the C flag. Since they're pushed so far away from any of their spawn points, they don't play as much of a role as far as spawns go as these two guys right here. So the spawn is going to be anchored towards the B flag, but as you can see, these two spawns right here are both going to be blocked. There is an enemy on the top level that's looking directly at that one top spawn, and then there's an enemy right next to that bottom spawn in the water at B. Therefore, that leaves us with these three remaining B spawns, and like I've said multiple times throughout this episode, I wouldn't expect you to know the exact spawn point, just the area, so it's one of these three spawns. Okay, so moving on to our final test, we changed up the positioning of the players as well as the flags that they hold. So the red team holds B and C, and the green team holds A. And as you can see, the red team is pushing towards A quite hard. Where would a green guy spawn right now? Now I mentioned this spawn earlier, they're going to be spawning at this top right shared spawn right here. And this is a situation that I've seen repeated over and over, so I know it's going to happen. It's happened several times while I was analyzing the spawn behavior, and I've also seen it several times in real matches. So this is exactly where those players are going to flip to. The reason for this, just in case you don't see it, the red players are clearly blocking all 3 of the potential A spawns, and therefore the game wants to find a safe spawn for them that is not an A spawn. And like I mentioned earlier, this spawn behaves as an emergency spawn. Okay, so that's going to wrap it up for today's episode of Spawn Guides. In next week's episode, we're going to be covering the map Ignition from the Onslaught DLC. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.